In the heart of Akoi, Lagos, stood the magnificent Balogun mansion, a place of marble floors, high gates, and power. To the outside world, it was a symbol of wealth and success. To little Tolani Balogun, however, it was a cage draped in luxury. Tolani lost her mother at birth. Chief Felix Balogun, her father, a man respected in business and politics, remarried when she was only 4. His new wife, Madame Funk, wore the face of grace in society but turned into a storm within the walls of the mansion. To the guests at cocktail parties, she was a poised society matron. To Tolani, she was a woman who never let her forget. You have no mother. You are nothing but a burden. Welcome to Moonlit Stories, where moonlight meets myth. Love timeless tales? Then hit like, subscribe, and join the circle. Every story begins with you. At first, Tolani tried to find comfort in her younger half-sister, Chloe. The moment the child was born, Tolani dreamed of being the doting elder sister, the protector. But Madame Funk would shove her away. "Stay away from Chloe! Don't you dare touch her!" she barked. Chloe grew up watching her mother's disdain for Tolani, and soon enough, she mirrored it. Snide remarks, entitled demands, a heart pampered by wealth. By the time Tolani turned 15, her days were not filled with music lessons or etiquette classes like Chloe's. Instead, she swept the marble staircases, scrubbed the chandeliers, and ran errands through Balogun Market under the hot Lagos sun. Madame Funk made sure her every hour was soaked in exhaustion, while Chloe spent afternoons in spas and evenings in the glittering restaurants of Victoria Island. One evening, after a punishing day at the market, Tolani returned carrying a few baskets of food. The pantry was bare. Funk had given her little money, but the mansion was filled with laughter. Women in jewel-toned lace and men in agbatas embroidered with gold sat in the living room. Funk had invited her wealthy circle for dinner. "Tolani!" Funk's sharp voice sliced through the chatter. "Prepare a feast for 20 people with what you brought. And if my guests are not satisfied, you will sleep outside tonight." The guests chuckled, assuming it was a joke. But Tolani knew better. Her hands trembled as she carried the meager ingredients into the kitchen. She had no choice. She worked like a woman possessed, pounding yam, spicing soups, stretching the little she had into wonders. Hours later, the aroma filled the air. The guests licked their lips and praised Funk's wonderful taste in chefs. Funk smiled sweetly, taking all the glory, not once mentioning the girl who stood in the shadows, sweat dripping from her brow. That night, Tolani passed the hallway and overheard whispers between Funk and her sister, Victoria. "This girl is growing into a beauty," Victoria muttered. "Have you not seen how men at Balogun Market look at her? Even in rags, she glows. She may outshine Chloe." Funk's voice was ice. "I have thought of it. The more I bury her in labor, the more invisible she will become. By the time Chloe is ready for society, Tolani will look like a servant, not a daughter of the Balogun house." Tolani pressed her back against the wall, fighting tears. In that moment, she understood. She was not just unloved. She was unwanted. But in her heart, a quiet fire flickered, though crushed it refused to die. Chief Felix Balogun was a man the city respected. His companies built skyscrapers in Lagos and funded political campaigns in Abuja. At public events, he appeared regal, his agbada pressed, his laughter deep, his words commanding attention. But inside his own home, his strength withered like dry leaves in harmattan. He loved his daughter Tolani in his own quiet way. Yet, with Funk as his wife, he seemed powerless. Funk had woven herself into every corner of the mansion, every detail of his life. She controlled the staff, the finances, and even his moods. Whenever Tolani complained about her mistreatment, Chief Felix sighed deeply, massaging his temples as if the burden of the world pressed upon him. "My daughter," he would whisper, "be patient. Endure. Funk, she is difficult, but she is still your mother." "She is not my mother!" Tolani once burst out, tears streaming down her face. "She hates me. She makes me work like a servant while Chloe enjoys everything. Why won't you protect me, Daddy?" Her father's eyes clouded with guilt. He reached for her hand, but lacked the courage to stand against his wife. "Life is not fair, Tolani, but you must be strong. One day you will understand." That one day never seemed to come. Meanwhile, Chloe blossomed under her mother's care. Every week, she was taken for facials in Lecky spas, fitted for designer gowns from London and Dubai, and chauffeured to etiquette lessons. At 15, she already carried herself with the arrogance of a queen. When relatives visited, they praised Chloe's beauty and refinement while glancing at Tolani in her worn house clothes, assuming she was a domestic staff living with the family. The contrast was Funk's design. She starved Tolani of affection, clothing, and care, determined to mold Chloe into the shining jewel of the Balogun dynasty while reducing Tolani to a shadow. One rainy afternoon, when the thunder rolled across the lagoon, Funk sent Tolani to climb onto the slippery roof to clear the gutters of leaves. Tolani's heart pounded as she gripped the wet tiles. Halfway across, her foot slipped. She cried out as her shoulder slammed against the roof edge, pain shooting through her body. She barely managed to cling on until a guard helped her down. She begged Funk for medical attention, but the woman folded her arms. Clumsy girls get what they deserve. Perhaps next time you will learn to be useful. Tolani lay in bed that night, her shoulder throbbing, her pillow wet with tears. She wished her father would storm in, demand answers, protect her. But Chief Felix did not come. He had retreated to his study, his heart heavy with silent regrets. The strain of the constant tension soon eroded his health. The powerful man who commanded respect in boardrooms began to suffer from severe hypertension. Doctors warned him to rest, to avoid stress. But how could he rest when his home was a battlefield of quiet cruelty? Months later, tragedy struck. Chief Felix slumped in his study one morning, clutching his chest. By evening, he was gone. Tolani's world shattered. With her father's death, the last fragile shield between her and Funk disappeared. Now, she was truly alone, an orphan in a mansion that had never felt like home. And Funk, standing at the head of the staircase in mourning lace, whispered coldly to Chloe, "At last, nothing stands in our way." The mansion was quieter without Chief Felix's presence, yet his absence thundered in Tolani's heart. She had lost the only person who gave her life even a shadow of comfort. Funk wore black lace, but her eyes glimmered not with grief, but with freedom. For her, this was opportunity. For Tolani, it was abandonment. Days after the burial, a black Mercedes parked at the gate. Out stepped a distinguished man in a navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Barrister Adeyemi, the family lawyer. "I am here," he announced in the living room, "to execute the late Chief Balogun's private will." Funk straightened on the velvet sofa, Chloe at her side, dressed in silk even during mourning. Tolani sat quietly, her hands folded, unsure why she had been called. Adeyemi opened the briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. He spoke with the weight of finality. Chief Felix Balogun, in his wisdom, left specific provisions for his first daughter, Tolani Balogun. A modest inheritance has been secured in her name, protected until her 21st birthday. Upon reaching that age, she will receive full access to the funds, including properties listed here. The words struck the air like thunder. Tolani's eyes widened. She could hardly believe it. Her father had thought of her, prepared something for her future. Funk's face, however, twisted into fury. "This is nonsense," she snapped. "Whatever my husband left belongs to my daughter, Chloe. That girl has no claim here." Adeyemi's voice remained calm but firm. "Madam, the testament is legally binding. These assets belong to Tolani, and to her alone once she comes of age. No one may tamper with it." Funk's nails dug into the armrest of the sofa. "We shall see about that." That night, in the privacy of her bedroom, she raged. Chloe, lounging on the bed, asked, "Mama, what if she really becomes rich? What if people start to respect her?" Funk's eyes burned with malice. "Over my dead body. I will not allow her to rise above you, Chloe. Not now, not ever." She picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Marcel," she whispered into the receiver. "It is time we speak." Marcel was Funk's cousin, a man with a reputation for shady business deals and a string of broken promises. He was older, nearly twice Tolani's age, with a smile that never reached his eyes. If anyone could be persuaded to ruin the girl's future, it was him. The plan was simple but sinister. Marcel would charm Tolani, pretend to love her, and marry her before her 21st birthday. Once married, he would control the inheritance through her and Funk would ensure Tolani remained under her thumb. The next morning, Marcel arrived at the mansion, dressed in crisp native attire, flashing an oily grin. He greeted Funk warmly, his eyes lingering on Tolani with unsettling interest. Tolani felt a chill run through her as he bent low to greet her, his words smooth and practiced. "Ah, so this is the beautiful Tolani. I have heard so much about you." She forced a polite nod, but deep inside, her spirit whispered, danger. She did not yet know how dark the road ahead would become. From the day Marcel stepped into the Balogun mansion, the atmosphere shifted. He came often, claiming he was there to support the grieving family. Yet, Tolani could feel his eyes following her like a predator watching prey. At dinner, he praised Funk's cooking, though it was Tolani who had labored in the kitchen. He showered Chloe with gifts, only to turn with an oily smile and hand Tolani a pair of cheap earrings, saying, "Something small for the jewel of the house." Tolani stiffened. Compliments from a man like him felt like traps. Still, she thanked him politely, her upbringing teaching her restraint. Deep inside, she wanted to throw the earrings back in his face. Funk, meanwhile, fueled the charade. "Marcel is family," she would remind Tolani. "You should treat him with respect. He has a kind heart, unlike you who is always ungrateful." But kindness was far from Marcel's true nature. One evening, while Tolani was washing dishes in the large mansion kitchen, he slipped in silently. "You work too hard," he said, leaning against the counter, his eyes crawling over her. "A young lady like you deserves protection. Someone strong by her side." Tolani tightened her grip on the wet plate. "Thank you, sir. I can manage on my own." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Don't be shy. I can make your life easier. You don't have to keep suffering under your stepmother. I could marry you. Yes, marry you, Tolani. Imagine leaving all this hardship behind." Her heart pounded. She had expected many things from him, but not this. "No," she whispered firmly. "I don't want that." Marcel's smile faded, his eyes hardening. "Think carefully. Without me, what future do you have? You are an orphan. Who will protect you?" Before Tolani could answer, Chloe burst into the kitchen, laughing. Marcel straightened instantly, turning his charm on her as though nothing had happened. But Tolani's skin crawled. She knew this was not the last time he would try. That night, she barricaded her bedroom door with a chair. Her heart ached with fear. Even within her father's mansion, she was no longer safe. Meanwhile, in her room, Funk and Marcel whispered. "She resists," he muttered, annoyance flashing across his face. "Don't worry," Funk said coldly. "We'll break her spirit. You will have her before her 21st birthday. Then her inheritance will be ours." Marcel smirked. "I'll find a way. She cannot escape me." Down the hall, Tolani curled under her thin blanket, tears staining her pillow. She thought of her late father and the inheritance she had not even touched. She wished he were alive to protect her from these wolves dressed in silk. She whispered a prayer into the darkness. "God, give me strength. Don't let them destroy me." It was a prayer born from fear, but also from the spark of defiance still burning inside her. Life in the Balogun mansion grew more suffocating with each passing day. Funk's cruelty sharpened, Chloe's mockery became louder, and Marcel's shadow lurked around every corner. Tolani felt like prey in her own home. Whenever she tried to avoid him, Marcel found ways to corner her by the staircase in the garden, even on her way to the market. His words became bolder, his intentions clearer. "Why do you resist me, Tolani?" he asked one afternoon, blocking her path at the gate. "Don't you know I can change your destiny? You'll never have a better offer." Tolani's voice trembled, but her eyes held fire. "I would rather suffer in truth than live in your lies." Marcel laughed bitterly, his gaze turning dangerous. "We will see how long you keep that pride." Tolani rushed past him, her heart pounding. She hurried to Balogun Market, the one place she could breathe freely among the chatter of traders and the smell of roasted corn and fresh peppers. Still, even there, she felt eyes on her, whispers trailing her steps. Some noticed her beauty despite her worn clothes. "That's Chief Balogun's daughter," market women whispered. "See how the stepmother treats her like a maid. God will judge." One woman, an elderly tomato seller named Mama Risi, often pulled her aside. My child, don't let them break you. Even gold buried in the ground will shine one day. Her words were a balm to Tolani's weary spirit. Back at the mansion, Funk devised new punishments. One rainy evening, she ordered Tolani to scrub the marble floors until midnight while Chloe reclined in silk pajamas, scrolling through her phone. When Tolani's knees ached and her back screamed, Chloe sneered. Cinderella without a prince, she mocked. Do you really think anyone will ever want you? Tolani said nothing, though her silence was louder than words. But strength was not easy to hold on to. That night, she overheard Funk and Marcel plotting again. Her birthday is less than 2 years away, Funk hissed. We cannot waste time. Push harder. Win her trust or break her will. Either way, she must marry you before then. Tolani's breath caught. They would stop at nothing. She realized then that her only chance of survival lay in escape, not just from the mansion, but from their grasp entirely. The thought terrified her. Where could she go? She had no mother, no father, no allies except a few sympathetic traders at the market. Yet a whisper stirred inside her, freedom is worth the risk. That night, as the rain tapped gently against her window, Tolani knelt on the cold floor and prayed. Lord, guide me. Show me the path out of this darkness. Don't let their plans succeed. If I must leave this place alone, then give me courage. Her tears fell, but her spirit stood tall. For the first time in years, she began to imagine a life beyond the gates of Ikoyi. And somewhere in the vast city of Lagos, destiny was already moving pieces into place. The Balogun mansion stood tall in Ikoyi, its white walls gleaming under the morning sun, but for Tolani, every corner was filled with shadows. Days dragged on with endless chores, whispers of plots, and Marcel's unsettling presence. Yet, change was on the horizon, though she did not know it. One Saturday afternoon, the gate buzzer rang. The guard shuffled to open it, and in stepped a tall man in a neatly pressed suit, accompanied by another in simpler clothes. They carried themselves with quiet authority, their eyes scanning the compound. Who are you? Funk demanded, stepping out with Chloe at her side, both dressed elegantly as if they expected visitors. The man bowed slightly. I am Mr. Emeka, assistant to Chief Adewale Ajayi, chairman of Ajayi Holdings. His tone was smooth, practiced. I have been asked to quietly observe and select a few young women from prominent families to be considered for the heir's hand in marriage. At the mention of the Ajayi name, Funk's eyes lit up. Ajayi Holdings was one of Nigeria's most powerful conglomerates, their wealth rivaling even the Balogans. To be linked with them meant power beyond imagination. Chloe nearly squealed, quickly adjusting her hair. Mother, this is it. My chance. Funk's smile grew sharp. Indeed, my daughter is the perfect candidate. Emeka nodded politely. His assistant scribbled notes as he observed Chloe, then his eyes shifted. In the corner of the compound, Tolani knelt, scrubbing the marble steps. Sweat glistened on her brow, her simple wrapper faded, yet her movements carried a quiet grace. Emeka's gaze lingered. And who is she? Funk's expression hardened. A distant relative. She helps around the house. Not relevant. But Emeka's assistant had already written Tolani's name. Something about her presence had caught their attention. That evening, after the men left, Funk paced the living room. Chloe, we must prepare. This is no ordinary opportunity. You will shine like never before. Lagos society will bow before us once you marry into the Ajayi Empire. Chloe clapped her hands in delight. Let Tolani watch and weep. She was born to serve. I was born to rule. Tolani, listening from the staircase, felt a storm brewing in her chest. She wanted no part of Chloe's glittering dreams, yet fate seemed determined to drag her into them. The following week, a discreet letter arrived, sealed with the Ajayi crest. Both Chloe and Tolani had been selected, along with 4 other young women, to spend time at the Ajayi penthouse in Victoria Island. There, the heir would observe and decide on his bride. Funk nearly fainted with joy. Chloe screamed and danced around the room. Tolani, holding the letter with trembling fingers, felt her heart pound. This was her chance, her way out of the prison she had always known. But with Funk's schemes and Marcel's threats, the path ahead promised not just escape, but danger. For the first time, destiny was calling her name. The drive to Victoria Island felt surreal to Tolani. She sat quietly in the back seat of the chauffeur-driven SUV, her eyes fixed on the glittering skyline of Lagos. Chloe sat beside her, adjusting her designer sunglasses, humming to herself in excitement. Funk was on the phone, spreading the news to anyone who would listen. My Chloe is going to be Ajayi's wife. The rest of you can keep dreaming. Tolani clutched the small nylon bag on her lap. Unlike Chloe's suitcases of designer gowns and imported perfumes, Tolani carried only 2 simple dresses and a pair of worn sandals. Yet for her, this was not about luxury, it was a lifeline. If she could escape the Balogun mansion, even for a little while, she would breathe. The SUV pulled into a towering glass building in Victoria Island. Security guards in crisp uniforms ushered them inside. The Ajayi penthouse occupied the top 3 floors, a place of marble, chandeliers, and gold-accented walls. It was not just wealth, it was power made visible. 6 young women had been chosen. Chloe, Tolani, and 4 others. Zainab, who boasted of her influential uncles in politics. Fatima, who exaggerated her humble beginnings. Celine, glamorous and flirtatious. And Adora, soft-spoken with an air of quiet elegance. They were welcomed by Mr. Emeka, the assistant, who stood at the center of the living room with a clipboard. "Ladies," he began, his voice calm and authoritative, "you have been chosen because you represent the finest of Lagos society. For 2 months, you will live here under close observation. The heir of Ajayi Holdings will spend time with each of you. At the end, he will choose one of you as his wife." The women exchanged glances, some nervous, others excited. Chloe lifted her chin high, already acting like the mistress of the house. Tolani lowered her eyes, praying no one would notice her trembling hands. The rooms were assigned, 2 girls per suite. Chloe expected to be placed with Tolani, but instead, Emeka paired her with Zainab. Tolani found herself sharing a room with Adora, who greeted her warmly. "Don't worry," Adora said with a gentle smile. "We're in this together." That night, after dinner, the women gathered in the lavish living room. Chloe made sure to speak loudly, laughing at the staff's jokes, as though she already owned the place. Tolani, meanwhile, quietly helped a housekeeper pick up the empty glasses. The staff exchanged knowing looks. She was different. Upstairs, behind tinted glass, someone watched. A man dressed simply in a guard's uniform, standing beside the billionaire patriarch himself. "She does not shine like the others," the old man remarked, his deep voice thoughtful. The guard smiled faintly, perhaps not on the surface, but there is something rare about her. The old man's eyes narrowed. "Then we shall see. This test is not about beauty alone. It is about heart." Tolani had no idea that the so-called guard's gaze followed her, not with suspicion, but with an interest that would change her life forever. Life in the Ajayi penthouse was unlike anything Tolani had ever known. Each morning, the young women were treated to lavish breakfasts served on gold-rimmed china. Spa sessions, etiquette lessons, and fashion fittings filled their afternoons. At night, they gathered in the grand dining hall, where chandeliers sparkled above their heads like captured stars. For Chloe, this was paradise. She strutted through the halls in imported gowns, tossing her hair as though she already owned the place. "The heir will be blind not to choose me," she boasted loudly to Zainab. "Tolani shouldn't even be here. She looks like a maid." Her words stung, but Tolani refused to answer. Instead, she poured her energy into small acts of kindness, helping the staff arrange flowers, tidying the common spaces, and offering gentle encouragement to Adora, her roommate, who often felt overwhelmed by the competition. The other girls noticed. Some sneered, but others began to respect her quiet dignity. Unknown to them, the penthouse was not just a home, it was a stage. Cameras, hidden discreetly in corners, recorded their every move. Chief Adewale, Ajayi believed character revealed itself not under glamour, but under pressure. And his heir, disguised as a simple security guard, observed them more closely than they could ever imagine. This guard, whose real name was Chuko Ajayi, found himself drawn to Tolani. She never sought attention, never fought to impress, yet she carried a grace that humbled him. While Chloe demanded extra servings of imported wine, Tolani slipped her bread to a hungry cleaner. While Celine flirted with the guards, Tolani asked about their families. One evening, as Tolani lingered in the kitchen, washing dishes she had not been asked to wash. Chuka approached quietly. "You don't need to do that," he said, his voice low. Tolani jumped, embarrassed. "Oh, I just thought the staff looked so tired. It's the least I can do." He studied her. There was no pretense in her tone, no attempt to impress. Just sincerity. "Most people in your position wouldn't even notice the staff," he murmured. Tolani smiled faintly, drying her hands. "When you've been treated like a servant your whole life, you see those others ignore." Her words sank deep into Chuka's chest. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was not just a guard, but the heir whose choice would decide all their futures. Instead, he simply said, "You are different." Meanwhile, upstairs in her room, Funk was busy on the phone with Chloe. Though she wasn't allowed to stay in the penthouse, she kept in constant contact. "Remember," she hissed, "do whatever it takes to make Tolani look unworthy. This is your chance, Chloe. Don't let her steal it." Chloe smirked, her eyes narrowing toward Tolani across the lounge. "Don't worry, Mother. By the time I'm done, no one will even remember her name." But Destiny had already remembered, and no amount of scheming could erase it. The penthouse glittered with wealth, but beneath the chandeliers, battles of pride and envy brewed. For Chloe, every day was another chance to flaunt her designer dresses, her polished smile, and her belief that she was already the chosen one. But Tolani's quiet presence gnawed at her like a thorn she could not pull out. "She doesn't deserve to be here," Chloe whispered to Zainab one morning during breakfast. "She's nothing but a house girl. Yet somehow people notice her." Zainab smirked. "Then make sure they notice the wrong things." That was all Chloe needed. Later that week, the women were instructed to attend a formal dinner in the penthouse hall, where important business associates of the Ajayi family would be present. It was to be their first true test of elegance, composure, and grace. The staff bustled, preparing delicacies and arranging the hall like a palace. Chloe saw her chance. While the other girls prepared in their rooms, she crept into Tolani's modest wardrobe. Among Tolani's 2 simple gowns, she slipped in a small box of jewelry taken from Celine's drawer, expensive pieces worth a fortune. With a wicked smile, she whispered to herself, "Let's see her explain this." That evening, the dinner began. The women descended the staircase one by one, dazzling in their gowns. Chloe wore crimson silk, gleaming with gold accessories. Tolani, though dressed in her plain blue gown, carried herself with quiet dignity, her posture graceful, her eyes lowered. The evening flowed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of music. But midway through, a staff member hurried into the hall, whispering to Mr. Emeka. His eyes narrowed. Moments later, security guards appeared. "There has been a theft," Emeka announced gravely. "Jewelry belonging to one of the ladies has gone missing." His gaze swept across the room. "We will search each room immediately." Whispers rippled through the hall. The women gasped, their faces painted with shock. Chloe forced a look of innocence, though her heart raced with excitement. The search began. One by one, the rooms were checked. Then came Tolani's turn. When the guards opened her wardrobe, the missing jewelry spilled out of the box. A collective gasp filled the air. All eyes turned to Tolani, who stood frozen, her hands trembling. I don't know how that got there," she stammered, tears filling her eyes. Chloe stepped forward, feigning shock. "Tolani, how could you? Stealing, in the Ajayi penthouse? Have you no shame?" The other women murmured, some shaking their heads, others glaring at her. Emeka's face was unreadable. He gestured for the guards to step back. "Enough. This matter will be reviewed." Tolani's chest tightened. Humiliation burned her skin like fire. She wanted to shout her innocence, to expose Chloe's lies, but the words stuck in her throat. From across the room, however, a pair of eyes watched keenly, the eyes of the guard. Chuka Ajayi had seen the jewelry planted through the hidden cameras. He knew the truth, but for now, he stayed silent, waiting for the right moment to act. Tolani wiped her tears, whispering to herself, "God, please, don't let them destroy me." Tolani sat alone in her room that night, her heart heavy with shame. The other girls had avoided her during dinner, whispering behind her back as though she carried a curse. Even Adora, her kind roommate, had looked at her with hesitant eyes. She sank to the edge of her bed, clutching the thin fabric of her dress. "Father, if you can see me," she whispered into the dark, "please tell me what to do. I am drowning." At that same moment, in a hidden surveillance room within the penthouse, Chief Adewale Ajayi reviewed the footage from the cameras. Beside him stood Chuka, still in his disguise as a guard. Together they watched as Chloe slipped into Tolani's wardrobe, planting the stolen jewelry. "Your cousin's daughter is a serpent," Chief Adewale muttered, his eyes narrowing. Chuka clenched his fists. "It is not just that, father. Tolani has been carrying herself with grace despite everything. She is not like the others. She is sincere." The older man studied him, amusement flickering in his gaze. "You speak as though she has already captured your heart." Chuka did not answer, but his silence was telling. The next morning, the women were summoned to the Grand Lounge. Mr. Emeka stood tall, his face expressionless. "The incident of theft was investigated overnight. The matter has been resolved." All eyes turned to Tolani, who sat quietly, bracing for more humiliation. Emeka continued, "It appears there was a misunderstanding. The jewelry was misplaced, not stolen. There will be no punishment." Chloe's jaw tightened. "But," she began, only for Emeka's sharp glance to silence her. Relief washed over Tolani, though the whispers did not stop. Some of the girls still eyed her suspiciously. Only Adora reached out, squeezing her hand gently. "Don't worry," she whispered. "The truth always wins." Later that afternoon, Tolani found herself in the penthouse garden, watering flowers to calm her nerves. She heard footsteps and turned to see the guard, Chuka, approaching. "You held your head high today," he said softly. "That takes strength." Tolani gave a weak smile. "Strength? It feels like I'm breaking inside. No matter what I do, they'll never see me as worthy." He looked at her, his eyes steady. "Worth is not given by people. It is revealed by character. You are worth more than you realize." Her heart fluttered at his words, though she brushed it aside. "Why are you so kind to me?" Chuka hesitated, fighting the urge to reveal his true identity. "Because I see you, even when others don't." For the first time in weeks, Tolani felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. Perhaps she was not as alone as she believed. But far across the hall, Chloe watched them through the window, her eyes burning with fury. "She thinks she can steal attention from me," Chloe hissed to herself. "I'll destroy her once and for all." The real battle had only just begun. Whispers about the jewelry scandal lingered like smoke long after Mr. Emeka cleared Tolani's name. Though the official word was misplacement, everyone suspected otherwise. Chloe, bitter that her plan had failed, decided it was time for something bolder. "She's too calm," Chloe sneered to Zainab as they lounged by the pool. "Even humiliation couldn't break her. If I don't crush her completely, the Heir might actually notice her." Zainab laughed. "Then crush her. But remember, walls have ears." Chloe smirked. "Then I'll make sure the walls burn." That evening, the women were asked to prepare small presentations showcasing themselves, an Ajayi family tradition to test confidence and eloquence. Each candidate would speak before Chief Adewale, the guards, and senior staff. It was not only about beauty, but wit and presence. Chloe, dripping in emerald lace, dazzled with her speech about luxury, influence, and her dream of being a queen of society. The audience clapped politely. Zainab spoke of political ambition, Fatima of her supposed humble roots, Adora charmed with a soft but thoughtful vision of philanthropy. Finally, Tolani stepped forward, wearing a plain gown that barely touched her ankles. She spoke quietly, but her words carried weight. "I have no riches to flaunt, no grand connections to boast of. All I have is gratitude, for life, for resilience, and for the chance to serve others. My dream is not to be worshipped, but to be useful. True wealth is not what we keep, but what we give." The hall fell silent. Even the cynical staff blinked, moved by her sincerity. Chief Adewale's eyes gleamed with approval. But Chloe's face twisted. Applause for Tolani was salt in her wounds. That night, when most of the penthouse slept, Chloe crept into the kitchen. She tipped over a lamp near the curtains and let the fire catch before slipping away. Her plan was cruel but simple, cause chaos, and make Tolani the scapegoat. Minutes later, smoke filled the halls. Alarms blared. The women screamed as guards rushed through corridors, herding them to safety. Tolani, instead of running, grabbed a bucket of water and tried to douse the flames near the pantry. Her shoulder burned from the heat, but she refused to abandon the staff still trapped inside. Chuka, dressed in his guard's uniform, spotted her through the haze. His heart clenched. While the others fled in terror, Tolani risked herself to save strangers. He rushed to her side, pulling her away just as part of the ceiling gave way. "Are you mad? You could have died!" he shouted, dragging her into the open air. Tears streaked her soot-stained face. How could I run when people were still inside? The staff she saved clung to her hands, thanking her breathlessly. Around them, the other girls stood pale and shaken. Chief Adewale arrived moments later, his eyes sweeping the scene. He saw the guilt flashing across Chloe's face, the ash smeared on Tolani's gown, and the gratitude in the staff's voices. The old man said nothing, but in his heart, the decision had already begun to take shape. The fire in the penthouse left everyone shaken. Though the flames were quickly contained, whispers spread faster than smoke. Staff murmured in corners, candidates traded accusations, and the Ajayi name was on every socialite's lips. How could such chaos erupt in one of the most secure residences in Lagos? Chief Adewale ordered a quiet investigation. He would not allow scandal to tarnish his family. But as the women returned to their routines, tension thickened like the soot still clinging to the walls. Chloe tried to control the narrative. "It was Tolani!" she declared dramatically to the others as they sat in the lounge. "She was in the kitchen when it started. Who else could it be?" Zainab nodded eagerly, hungry for someone else's downfall. "It makes sense. She's jealous of us. Maybe she wanted attention." Adora frowned, her voice steady. "That's not true. I saw Tolani risking her life to pull the cooks out. Without her, we might be mourning deaths." The room fell quiet. Adora's defense rattled Chloe, but she quickly smirked. "Of course you defend her. Some of us see things more clearly." Tolani sat silently, her fingers folded in her lap. She had grown used to carrying burdens she did not deserve, but this one cut deeper. To be accused of trying to destroy the very place that had given her hope felt unbearable. That night, she slipped into the garden, kneeling on the damp grass under the moonlight. "God," she whispered, her voice breaking, "why do they always twist my good into evil? Am I cursed to always be the villain in their eyes?" A shadow moved nearby. She turned and found the guard, Chuka, watching her quietly. His face softened at the sight of her tears. "You saved lives, Tolani. I was there. Don't let their lies consume you." Tolani wiped her cheeks, embarrassed. "Why do you care? I'm just me. No one important." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You are more important than you know." Before she could respond, footsteps echoed behind them. Chloe emerged, her eyes narrowing. Well, well. No wonder Tolani seems so calm. She's been entertaining the guards. Her words dripped with venom. Tolani gasped. "That's not." But Chloe cut her off with a cruel laugh. "You think the heir of Ajayi Holdings will ever look at you? Keep dreaming, Tolani. All you'll ever be is a maid in silk." She turned sharply and stormed back inside, her heels clicking like gunshots against the tiles. Tolani's chest ached, but Chuka gently touched her arm. "Ignore her. Truth has a way of rising, just like smoke." In the surveillance room, Chief Adewale replayed the footage again. He had seen Chloe slip into the kitchen before the fire started. He had seen Tolani's courage. The time for pretending was drawing closer to its end. And when the truth was revealed, not only Chloe, but the entire city would learn who Tolani Balogun truly was. While the penthouse returned to its polished routines, one woman in Ikoyi was restless. Madame Funk Balogun had not been invited to the Ajayi residence, but through Chloe's frequent calls, she knew everything. Each update stoked her fury. Tolani surviving the fire, the staff praising her, and whispers that the Ajayi patriarch himself had taken notice. Funk's nails dug into her palm as she paced her room. "This girl is like a stubborn weed," she muttered. "No matter how many times I try to uproot her, she keeps growing." Chloe's voice came through the phone, sharp with frustration. "Mother, she is winning sympathy. The guards like her. Even that Adora girl defends her. If we don't end this soon, she might actually reach the final choice." Funk's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Then we must not play small. If Tolani shines, we must throw mud, so dark no one will ever forget it. 2 days later, Funk arrived at the penthouse, draped in expensive osso oak, pretending to bring Chloe extra gowns. In truth, she carried something more dangerous. Hidden inside the folds of fabric was a small vial of powder she had obtained from a dubious herbalist in Mushin, a charm said to cloud minds and twist affections. Late that night, in the secrecy of Chloe's room, Funk pressed the vial into her daughter's hand. "Slip this into his drink," she instructed. "The heir will not see anyone but you. Once you bind him, Tolani will vanish from his thoughts forever." Chloe's eyes glittered. "And if I'm caught, then make sure you're not," Funk replied coldly. Meanwhile, Tolani remained unaware of the scheme. She focused on her quiet tasks, helping the cooks prepare meals and assisting Adora with her presentations. But the tension in the air weighed heavily on her. Every glance from Chloe felt like a dagger. Every whisper in the hallway carried her name. One evening, as the women gathered for a dinner hosted by the Ajayi family, Chloe seized her chance. With a graceful smile, she leaned toward the guard, who poured wine, the same man she didn't know was Chuko Ajayi, the heir himself. "This glass is for the heir," Chloe said smoothly, slipping the powder into the drink while no one looked. But someone did see. Tolani, seated quietly at the far end, noticed Chloe's hand hovering too long over the glass. Her instincts flared. Something was wrong. The glasses were served. The heir, still disguised as a guard, was about to lift his drink when Tolani stood abruptly, her voice breaking the silence. "Wait," she blurted, trembling but firm. "Don't drink that." The room froze. All eyes turned to her. Chloe's face paled, but she forced a laugh. "What nonsense is this? Are you accusing me?" Tolani's voice shook, but she did not back down. "I don't know what she put in that glass, but it is not safe." For the first time, suspicion shifted, not toward Tolani, but toward Chloe. And in that moment, Chuka realized Tolani was not only courageous, she was willing to risk everything for truth. The dining hall went silent, every pair of eyes fixed on Tolani. The chandeliers above seemed to dim under the weight of her words. Chloe's hand shook as she tried to mask her panic, her lips curving into a brittle smile. "How dare you?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "First you shame this family with a false theft, then you embarrass us with your hysterics. Now you accuse me, your own sister, of poisoning a drink." Gasps echoed across the table. The other girls leaned forward, eager for drama. Adora, however, kept her gaze steady on Tolani, silently willing her not to back down. Tolani swallowed hard. Her heart raced, but her eyes did not leave the wine glass. "I don't know what you call it, but I saw Chloe put something inside. Please don't drink it." Chief Adewale, seated at the head of the table, raised his hand. The murmurs stopped instantly. His gaze shifted from Tolani to Chloe, cold and unblinking. "Is this true?" Chloe's laugh rang false. "Of course not. Father, you know me. This is just Tolani's jealousy. She cannot stand my success." Before Adewale could respond, Chuka, still in his disguise as a guard, stepped forward. "Sir, with your permission." He took the glass carefully, sniffed the liquid, and with a subtle nod signaled one of the senior staff to remove it. "We will have it tested," Adewale announced. "Until then, no one drinks." The tension broke, but the damage had been done. Chloe's cheeks burned as she sat rigid, fury coursing through her veins. Tolani's accusation had not been dismissed, it had been taken seriously. Later that night, Chloe stormed into her room, slamming the door, so hard the mirrors rattled. Funk, waiting inside, rose from the bed in alarm. "What happened?" "She exposed me," Chloe cried, "in front of everyone. If they test that drink—" Funk gripped her daughter's arms. "Calm yourself. These are rich men's games. They won't announce scandal to the world. But listen, Chloe, this means Tolani is not just lucky. She is dangerous. If we don't silence her, she will ruin everything." Meanwhile, in her own room, Tolani sat trembling. Adora placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were brave," she whispered. Tolani shook her head. "Or foolish. I may have just signed my death sentence." But Chuka thought differently. In the quiet of the surveillance room, he replayed the footage, watching Tolani's trembling form standing up against her sister. A smile tugged at his lips. "She has more courage than all of them combined," he murmured. His father glanced at him knowingly. "Be careful, Chuka. A woman who can risk everything for truth can also capture a man's heart without trying." Chuka didn't deny it. His heart was already leaning. But as Funk's plots deepened and Chloe's rage sharpened, Tolani was about to discover that speaking the truth always carried a cost. The test results from the wineglass never reached public ears. Chief Adewale, shrewd as ever, ensured discretion. Still, the household buzzed with suspicion. Tolani noticed the sideways glances, the hushed conversations that ceased when she entered the room. Some believed her, others thought she had staged the entire scene for attention. But the silence from Chief Adewale spoke volumes. He had not dismissed her warning. That alone enraged Chloe. In the privacy of her suite, Chloe paced like a caged lioness. She's winning sympathy again. Every time she should be destroyed, she somehow comes out cleaner. It's as if God himself fights for her. Funk, seated elegantly on the edge of the bed, leaned forward. Then we fight darker. If God fights for her, we must find powers that fight against her. Chloe blinked. What do you mean? Funk's lips curved into a sinister smile. Tomorrow, I will take you to someone. A woman who owes me favors. When she's done, Tolani's light will dim forever. The next afternoon, while the other girls attended etiquette lessons, Chloe slipped out with her mother. Their convoy of cars wound through Lagos until they reached a hidden compound in the outskirts of Mushin. Inside, incense curled through the air, thick with an ancient heaviness. At the center of the dimly lit room sat Madame Ifeoluwa, an elderly woman with eyes like embers. "You seek victory over another," she rasped, her voice low but commanding. Funk bowed slightly. "This girl, Tolani, she blocks my daughter's path. We want her disgraced, broken, forgotten." The old woman stirred a calabash bowl, her fingers dancing in the water. Her spirit is strong. She has a covering. Light follows her. Breaking her will not be simple. Chloe's fists tightened. Then give me something powerful enough. Madame Ifeoluwa chuckled darkly. Power comes with price. She handed Chloe a small pouch of black powder. Slip this into her belongings. When she touches it, misfortune will cling to her like a shadow. But remember, what you plant may return to you. Chloe's eyes gleamed with greed. She clutched the pouch tightly. I don't care. She will never outshine me again. Back at the penthouse, Tolani spent her evening helping the cooks prepare food for the staff. She was weary, her fingers raw from chopping vegetables, but she felt peace serving quietly. She didn't know that in her absence. Chloe entered her room and carefully sprinkled the black powder into the hem of her only good gown. That night, as Tolani prepared to wear it for the next dinner, she lifted the dress. A strange chill rippled across her skin, but she brushed it off. Just nerves, she whispered to herself. At the dinner, her steps faltered. Her voice trembled when asked to introduce herself again. A sudden cough racked her chest, forcing her to sit down. Guests frowned. Whispers began. Chloe's lips curved in triumph. Finally, she thought, her shine is fading. But what neither she nor Funk knew was that light cannot be dimmed forever. And Tolani's story was only beginning to rise. The strange weakness clung to Tolani for days. She stumbled during etiquette lessons. Her voice cracked when asked to read aloud, and her once bright aura seemed dulled. The other girls whispered among themselves. Maybe she's not as strong as we thought, Zainab murmured. She's finally showing her true colors, Fatima added. Only Adora stood firm. No, something is wrong. This is not Tolani. Chloe watched from across the room, a secret smile dancing on her lips. Every cough, every stumble was proof her scheme had worked. Each day Tolani looked smaller, fainter, like a flame about to be snuffed out. But in the quiet of the surveillance room, Chuka Ajayi saw more than the surface. Night after night, he watched her fight to keep going, sneaking into the kitchen to help the staff, staying up late to practice her poise, whispering prayers in the garden when she thought no one saw. She is battling something unseen, he told his father, and yet she refuses to stop giving. Chief Adewale stroked his beard, his eyes sharp. If she survives this, then she has the strength of a true matriarch. Meanwhile, Tolani herself felt trapped in a storm. One evening, after nearly collapsing in the dining hall, she fled to the rooftop terrace, clutching her chest. The city lights below blurred through her tears. "Why, Lord," she whispered, her voice breaking, "why does evil prosper while I suffer? If you brought me here only to disgrace me, then take me away instead. I cannot bear it." A voice startled her from behind. "Don't say that." It was Chuka, the guard, his eyes fierce with concern. He stepped closer, steadying her trembling shoulders. "You are stronger than you know, Tolani. Darkness fights hardest against those with the brightest destiny." Tolani shook her head. "You don't understand. Whatever I do, they twist it. Whatever good I give, they turn to shame. Maybe Chloe is right. Maybe I don't belong here." Chuka's voice softened. "You belong more than anyone. You carry what money cannot buy: humility, courage, compassion. That is what makes a true queen." Their eyes locked, and for a moment, Tolani felt warmth pierce through the fog of despair. That same night, Adora entered their shared room to find Tolani collapsed on the bed. She knelt quickly, whispering prayers over her friend. As she lifted Tolani's gown to cover her, she noticed strange black dust clinging to the hem. Suspicion flared in Adora's heart. She remembered Chloe's smug glances, her too-sweet laughter. Carefully, Adora gathered a pinch of the powder and hid it in a handkerchief. The next morning, she went straight to Mr. Emeka. "Sir," she said firmly, "I believe someone is trying to harm Tolani." Emeka's eyes hardened as he examined the powder. "This is no accident." For the first time, Chloe's schemes had left evidence, and the walls of the penthouse were about to close in on her. Morning sunlight streamed into the penthouse, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. Adora held a folded handkerchief in her palm, her heart racing as she waited in Mr. Emeka's office. The quiet assistant to Chief Adewale studied the black powder with sharp eyes. "This is not dust," he muttered. "This is juju, an attempt to bind or weaken." He looked up at Adora. "Where did you find it?" Adora straightened her back. "On Tolani's gown, the one she wore the night she collapsed." Emeka leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You've done the right thing, but this cannot be handled carelessly. If the family name is stained with talk of charms, it will cause scandal." Adora's eyes flashed. "And what about Tolani? She is dying slowly because someone is jealous." Emeka's jaw tightened. "Leave this with me. Justice will come." Meanwhile, in the lounge, Chloe basked in false confidence. She twirled in her emerald gown, boasting to the others. "Do you see how Tolani can barely walk now? The Heir will never look at a sickly girl. Soon, it will be between me and perhaps Adora, but we all know who truly belongs here." Fatima laughed nervously, but Celine smirked. "You talk too much, Chloe. Let's see if your pride lasts until the final choice." Tolani entered just then, her steps weak, but her head held high. She ignored the stares, choosing instead to sit quietly with a book. Chloe sneered. "See!" A servant pretending to be a lady. Before Tolani could respond, Mr. Emeka entered the hall. His face was grave. "Ladies, I must remind you, this competition is not merely about beauty or status. It is about integrity. Anyone caught using dishonest means will be disqualified immediately." Chloe froze. For a moment, her eyes flicked toward Tolani's gown, but she quickly forced a smile. "Of course, sir. I would never dream of dishonesty." Emeka's gaze lingered on her longer than the others. "I hope so, Miss Chloe, because the truth has a way of revealing itself." That evening, Tolani retreated to the garden again, too weary to keep up appearances. She sat on a stone bench, gazing at the stars. To her surprise, Adora joined her, holding her hand gently. "Tolani," Adora whispered, "you are not alone. I believe you. And soon, everyone else will see the truth." Tears welled in Tolani's eyes. "Why are you so kind to me?" Adora smiled. "Because kindness is what you have always shown, even when the world was cruel. Now it is time it returns to you." From the shadows, Chuka watched the exchange, his chest tightening. Every day he saw her strength, every day he saw her suffer, and every day his resolve grew stronger. "Father was right," he thought. "She is not just a candidate. She is the one." But as he turned away, he knew Funk and Chloe would not surrender quietly. Their masks were beginning to crack, and soon the unmasking would come in full force. The Ajayi penthouse was alive with anticipation. The final ceremony was only a week away, and whispers filled Lagos high society. Invitations had gone out to politicians, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries. Everyone wanted to witness the moment when the heir of Ajayi Holdings would reveal his bride. Inside the mansion, however, the atmosphere was anything but celebratory. Tolani's mysterious weakness still lingered, though Adaora's care and quiet encouragement helped her push through. She forced herself to attend every lesson, every dinner, determined not to give Chloe the satisfaction of seeing her break. Chloe, meanwhile, grew restless. Though she pretended to glide with confidence, her nerves frayed with every sideways glance from Mr. Emeka, every whisper of justice floating through the halls. She stormed into her room one evening and dialed her mother. "Mother, I'm scared. They know something." Funk's voice crackled over the line, stern and sharp. "Control yourself. Fear will expose you faster than proof. Hold your head high. If you falter now, we both lose everything." "But Tolani—" "Forget Tolani!" Funk snapped. "I told you she is a weed, and weeds are trampled. Focus on the heir. Charm him. Bind him if you must. Once you are chosen, no one will dare challenge you." But Chloe didn't know the heir had been watching her all along, not as a distant prince, but as the guard she ignored. That same night, the girls were invited to a private dinner with Chief Adewale himself. The patriarch sat at the head of the table, his piercing gaze moving from one face to another. "My son must choose a woman worthy not just of his name, but of our legacy," he said slowly. "This is why we tested not only your beauty, but your character. Wealth fades, but honor remains." Chloe forced a smile, confident her mother's schemes had shielded her from suspicion. She raised her glass, her words smooth. "Chief, you will see that no one can represent the Ajayi family better than me." But Adewale's eyes lingered on Tolani, who sat quietly, her hands folded. Despite her pale complexion, there was no bitterness in her gaze, no arrogance in her posture. She looked fragile yet unbreakable. After the dinner, Chuka approached his father privately. "It's time, Baba. We cannot let their lies ruin her." Adewale nodded gravely. "The time of masks is ending. But she must not only be defended, she must also stand. Only then will the people accept her." Meanwhile, in the shadows of her room, Chloe poured the last of the powder from Madame Ifeoluwa into her palms, whispering bitter prayers. "Tomorrow, Tolani, you will not rise. I swear it." But in another corner of Lagos, Madame Ifeoluwa tossed restlessly in her sleep. Her spirits whispered warnings. "The girl you fight is covered. The curse will return to sender." The cracks were showing, and when they split wide open, not even Funk's wealth or Chloe's pride would hold back the truth. The evening of the grand ceremony arrived. Victoria Island glittered brighter than ever as convoys of black SUVs and luxury cars streamed toward the Ajayi penthouse. Politicians, business moguls, Nollywood stars, and foreign dignitaries filled the Golden Hall, their laughter echoing under chandeliers imported from Italy. This was not just a family event, it was a national spectacle. At the center of it all stood Chief Adewale Ajayi, his agbada of royal blue silk flowing like waves. Beside him, the guard, who had quietly shadowed the young women for weeks, now wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo. No one yet knew that he was the true heir. The 6 women were ushered into the grand hall, though only 3 remained as finalists, Chloe, Adora, and Tolani. Their gowns shimmered under the lights, Chloe in fiery red lace, Adora in emerald satin, and Tolani in a simple white gown that seemed almost too modest for the occasion. Yet, in her humility, she glowed. The hall buzzed as guests whispered. Many leaned toward Chloe, assuming her poise and wealth made her the obvious choice. Few spared Tolani a second glance, except the staff, who exchanged knowing smiles, and the heir himself, who never once looked away from her. Chief Adewale raised his staff, and the room fell silent. For generations, the Ajayi family has stood as a pillar of wealth, honor, and tradition. Tonight, my son will choose his bride before you all. But before that, I must speak of truth. A hush fell. Guests leaned forward eagerly. Adewale continued, his voice strong. 4 weeks, these young women have lived among us. We did not test only their beauty, but their hearts. and the truth has been revealed. At that moment, Mr. Emeka stepped forward, holding a folder. He opened it and read aloud. Evidence was found of attempts to disgrace one of the candidates through theft and charms. Gasps rippled through the hall. The culprit, Chloe Balogun. Chloe froze, her face draining of color. What? Lies, she cried, her voice trembling. But screens lit up around the hall, displaying footage from hidden cameras. Chloe slipping jewelry into Tolani's wardrobe, Chloe's hand hovering over the wineglass, Chloe sprinkling powder into Tolani's gown. Each revelation landed like a thunderclap. The crowd erupted in outrage. Women covered their mouths in shock. Men shook their heads in disgust. Funk, seated among the guests, sprang to her feet. Stop this nonsense. My daughter is innocent. This is a setup. Chief Adewale's eyes were like steel. Silence, Madame Funk. The truth is undeniable. Chloe collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I only did it because I couldn't let her take everything. She's nothing. She's nobody. And then the heir stepped forward at last. No longer the humble guard, but Chuka Ajayi, son of Adewale, heir to the empire. The hall erupted in gasps as he stood tall, his voice calm but resolute. You are wrong, Chloe, he said, his eyes fixed on Tolani. She is not nothing. She is everything. Tolani's breath caught as the room turned toward her, and in that moment, the world she had once thought would crush her prepared instead to lift her high. The hall trembled with gasps and murmurs as Chuka Ajayi revealed his true identity. Gone was the quiet guard who lingered in the shadows. Now he stood tall, radiant in a tuxedo, every inch the heir of Ajayi Holdings. Eyes widened, fans fluttered, and even Lagos socialites who prided themselves on knowing everything were left stunned. Chloe, still on her knees, stared at him in horror. You were the guard? Her voice cracked. All this time? Chuka's gaze was firm. Yes. I walked these halls as a servant to see who you truly were. Wealth can polish the outside, but it cannot hide a rotten heart. His voice carried across the room like thunder. And Tolani, she revealed a heart purer than gold. The hall erupted in applause. Some guests shouted in admiration. Others clapped so hard their jewelry jingled. The staff cheered openly, tears in their eyes. Chief Adewale stepped forward, his staff tapping the floor. Let it be known tonight. Character is greater than inheritance, humility higher than pride. And so, the future of this family shall rest with the one who carries the light of truth. He turned toward Tolani. Tolani Balogun, will you stand? Tolani rose slowly, her white gown glimmering under the chandeliers. Her knees trembled, but her spirit stood tall. For years she had been treated as invisible, unworthy, even cursed. Now the entire nation watched her. Chuka crossed the floor to her, his eyes never leaving hers. When he reached her, he knelt and held her hand. Tolani, from the moment I saw your courage, I knew you were different. You risked humiliation to defend truth. You saved lives in fire. You carried kindness where others carried pride. You taught me that love is not found in riches but in sincerity. Tears blurred Tolani's vision as the hall held its breath. I choose you, Chuka declared. Not as a servant, not as a candidate, but as my wife, my partner, and the future matriarch of this family. The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Women ululated, men cheered, and cameras flashed like lightning. Adora clasped her hands with joy, whispering, At last, justice. Funk and Chloe, humiliated beyond words, stumbled toward the exit. No one followed them. For the first time, Lagos society saw their cruelty laid bare. They would fade into whispers of disgrace. Tolani, trembling, whispered back to Chuka, I never dreamed this life could be mine. He smiled, lifting her hand to his lips. You earned it, not through wealth, but through who you are. In the weeks that followed, preparations for the wedding filled the city with excitement. On the day itself, Tolani walked down the aisle in a gown of ivory silk and gold embroidery, no longer the shadow in her father's house, but the radiant bride of Nigeria's most powerful heir. And when she stood beside Chuka as husband and wife, she remembered Mama Risi's words at Balogun Market. Even gold buried in the ground will shine one day. Now Tolani shone brighter than ever. Her story was no longer one of pain. It was legacy,